Hi, welcome to the Ellis Talker Show. I'm DV LeBron. Do you have contracting needs, things that you need fixed in your house or maybe roofing? Contact K&H. Give them a shot. Check them out. They do all those things and they even do landscaping. So reach out if you have those needs. They are the exclusive sponsor of the Ellis Talker Show. But today, my very special guest is Miss Jane Sharpe, who is an author of some really cool books. And I wanted to have her on because I want her to speak about her journey in all of this. How are you doing, ma'am?
I'm doing really well. I'm glad to be here.
Thank you so much for coming on. I'm really glad that you kind of reached out and we were able to make this happen. I love great stories. So the things that I saw was you had a Freedom Baby, ABC, and Jane's Journal, and you had, I mean, I think it was like 14 books or something. You've been busy.
I
You've been
have.
really busy. You have. So before I get into all that good stuff that we're going to cover, I wanted you to go ahead and kind of just tell the people watch my show your story.
Sure. Well, I'm a mom of five. I've homeschooled them. My oldest is 23, so I've had quite a few of my kids graduate. I have just one student right now who's 12. He's into role-playing games, which is a new thing for our family. That is like a new language to learn about that hobby. Since I've got so much more time on my hands, I've been able to, explore this whole author and self-publishing thing. But before I was a mom, I was an Air Force veteran. My husband and I got married really young. And so we joined the Air Force to sort of be like a safety net, sort of. We got housing, we got medical, we had that steady job, we had the GI Bill afterward, the VA loan. And so we joined the Air Force to create a safety net for ourselves because we knew that marrying young was sort of could be difficult. And so we're super glad that we did that. Um, I don't know. I have weird hobbies. I have probably 6,000 books in my house. And one of my recent things I was learning to do is take like wool from sheep or whatever and learning how to spin it into yarn. So that's a fun, weird thing about me.
Wow. And I mean, first, before I get into anything, as your Navy brother, thank you so much for your service and your hubby's service. You may be Air Force, but you still serve. So
That's what we get told.
yeah, everybody gets a little jealous of the Air Force. You guys had all the good stuff. But
Oh, we were stationed at Army bases our entire tours. Like, so
oh
we did not
no.
get the luxe Air Force life that we thought we would.
Oh, no fancy hotel barracks. That's what
No,
I'm
no.
talking about. That's good. So you've written all these books. Are your kids neurodivergent? I don't know if you mentioned that.
No, none of
No,
mine are.
none of
No.
your kids are neurodivergent. You decided to homeschool them, which is a decision that a lot of families. Matter of fact, there's been several articles that have talked about how many people are pulling their kids out to homeschool. Can you talk about that kind of journey in homeschooling? What made you go there, and some of the good things that you've seen in that?
Oh, it was purely selfish decision to homeschool. One of my jobs I had before I was married, I was a daycare teacher from 8 to 5. And I saw those kids during the prime of their day. They showed up, they were a little grumpy. They'd barely gotten pulled out of bed and had breakfast. And then by the time their mom picked them up, they were grumpy again and ready for dinner. And so I realized I think I was 19, that I was seeing those kids for the best part of their day. And when I was pregnant, I was like, wait a second, like, I don't want to send my kids off for the best part of their day. And then I realized, I was not going to see them all day long. And I was like, how am I carrying this child and then not going to hang out with them every day? And so just very selfishly, because I liked them and I wanted to be with them and I didn't want to forfeit those years of them being in school, we decided to keep them home. And I think it's been fabulous. I think I saw a meme that says you get 16,000 hours extra with your kids if you homeschool. And I think that time, you know, my oldest is 23, and you can't get that time back. So
No.
I'm really thankful that we were able to do it. I think a lot of families, homeschooling is growing a ton. And I could have said that before COVID, but since COVID, I think people were doing the online school and they saw what the education was looking like. And it was a weird time because of the online thing with COVID, of course. But I think a lot of people realize, like, well, gosh, I could maybe do a better job than what I'm seeing.
Yeah, and that happened a lot, and it's continuing to happen. And there's a lot of things that are going on in society. and then bullying and stuff like that. So a lot of parents are choosing to that. So you've had, you had your kids all through go through homeschool, and you've
Yes.
been through that. When a that's a big decision for a family to make, because it might mean that they go down to one income. There's a lot of things that could happen. So
Sure.
when families are usually, they're like, what do I do? So can you kind of, like, I know that can be a very extensive question, but when you think about what's step one here, what would you recommend for a family considering homeschool?
Well, I have a contact form on my website. If anybody wanted to meet with me online for half an hour to discuss exactly that specific to their family, that's something that they could go to my website and do. But I think as a general suggestion to anybody who's just considering it, I would say first go find other homeschoolers. They're the community in person. I'm north of Austin, Texas, and there's probably 6 different kinds of homeschooling that you could find groups. People that love to stay outside all the time, people who are learning, Latin conjugations, people who have a mix down the middle, people who were previously public schooled and are trying to figure out what does homeschool mean for them, like when that's all they know. So I would say first find local homeschoolers and go to an event and just listen to the moms talk and ask them questions. Second, there's a quiz online. If you go to Google and you type in homeschool style quiz, there's a really helpful quiz that you can take, and it'll give you styles that you can take those words from the quiz and go Google what does that mean. And I think that your partner should take it too, because part of homeschooling is that both parents, even if one is the main teacher, the other one needs to feel like you guys, the two parents, need to be on the same page about what does success look like. Because if mom thinks success is laying in a field dissecting flowers, and dad thinks, test scores every Friday morning is success, they have to communicate to make sure that they both think that the right way it is getting done. So
Yeah, that's very reasonable. I mean,
yeah,
you're
yeah,
both part of that. The reason you go into homeschool is so that you can both be more part of that education. Take a greater role into that. So
yeah.
I like how you approach that concept.
You've
But
got to be
I
on the
mean,
same page.
definitely, definitely. Now, I mean, you got 5 kids. You're juggling those responsibilities. You're homeschooling, and you decide to write all those books. I mean, how do you find the time and how does someone pursue, and so much, and it could be any passion, but you're pursuing your passion of writing. How do
Right.
you pursue a passion like that with that kind of schedule? Maybe somebody's listening, mama or papa, in that situation, that maybe could benefit on that.
Well, I think that it doesn't have to be writing for somebody. For me, it was writing. For other people, it could be any number of things, that whether it's hobbies or interests or continuing education or a part-time job. For me, it really, when my older kids were all graduating, in homeschool, probably just like in regular school, as your kids get older, you're less involved. They have to manage their time. They know what their assignments are. You're not, falling behind them as much. And so when I had 2 kids in high school and my youngest was, sort of entering into the more independent phase of homeschooling, I realized I had all this time on my hands. And so, with homeschooling, you could spend 8 hours a day doing school, but your kids would all graduate when they were like 11 or something if you did that. So the homeschooling day could be very leisurely and still get everything absolutely done. And so my son spends about 3 hours, maybe a little more, on school. And so if I get up early, or if I, if he's reading, I can be next to him on the laptop. And it's really it's very much finding little 15-minute pockets of time and doing it in those little pockets. If it's not getting up earlier, which is not my favorite.
Yeah, no, no. One of those things that is weird about me is I am an early bird. I am
Okay.
definitely an early. I don't understand it, because when I was in the Navy, waking up early was the most awful thing on the planet. And then now I'm up at the crack of dawn, like, what's going on here?
What am I
But
doing now?
yeah, what am I doing here? But you wrote these fascinating books, and you wrote many. But like, what brought upon, because I mean, you have one where you're talking about gun safety with children, which is a touchy
Yep,
subject. I mean,
it
there are
can be.
some people there, it can be. Now, you look back at our history, there, children and guns was not a bad thing up to a certain point, but there was a lot of responsibility put on that. So, what
Right.
brought upon, before we kind of get into that particular book, what brought that whole series of Freedom Baby ABC? How did that come about?
So my first book that I put together was called Crunchy Mama ABC. And a mom on Facebook in 2019, I think, had just done a silly post, and she put in the body of it, apple cider vinegar, crunchy moms keep it going, do the alphabet. And so there was like 300 comments of moms coming in and going to the next alphabet letter from the person commenting above them, and just listing off all these aspects of crunchy living that were next in the alphabet. And so I was trying to tackle that alphabet also. And then I realized, like, my brain just like ran off without me. And I made 7 different themed alphabet lists. And I've published 4 of them so far. I have 1 in the works and 2 more coming down the pipe maybe next year. And I just went nuts. And so I was thinking, there's the crunchy mom lifestyle. My husband's an excellent cook. There's, kitchen words. And then I was thinking, at that time we had done a unit study in our family of, I was taking the kids to the range and making sure they were all like gun safe. And we had a new range here that I had a membership at. And so I would take one or the other of them pretty much every week for a whole semester, so that they could we were learning how to clean the guns and everything. I was like, well, gosh, all this vocabulary, and Freedom Baby ABC just came together with, it's partially like gun anatomy and the parts of the gun, but it's got, I think it's 7 safety principles also. So it has, some freedom aspects, like we have a duty to defend, and the Second Amendment, I think F is freedom. And so because I grew up in that lifestyle, I was on a marksmanship team when I was 12. My dad has always been a reloader. He goes to the North-South Skirmish Association. I guess they're meets or skirmishes, where he
Mhm.
does black powder muzzleloading competitions. And we have pictures of me doing that, not doing it, but being there when I was like 12 months old, just
Mhm.
watching him and supporting him with my mom. And so it's always been a part of my life. And then because I wasn't introducing my kids, I was making sure they were all up to date. And then since they were old enough, we were learning how to disassemble different weapons and clean them and stuff. So it was just on my mind, and I made that whole alphabet for it. And I mean, I love it. The gun safety activity book that matches Freedom ABC is my bestseller. And I'm so proud of it. And I love talking to people about it. When I go to gun shows and I have it at the table, people absolutely love it. Like, they just love it when they see it.
When we were talking about you coming on, I brought up, because when you hear, there's certain words, and unfortunately words have taken so many different meanings to just throughout
Sure.
time, and so when you're gun safety, uh some in some circles kind of became a bad word, because that meant gun control, but it was just prettier. um
Yes.
and so I was concerned about that. But that with weapons being used in inappropriate manners, I think that education on firearms is definitely needed. um I mean, how does, kind of break it down a little bit to me, like, what does that gun safety look like for, are you breaking it down for age? What age group did you write this book for? That so parents can, parents that are firearm owners can maybe consider that for their kids. Because,
For
and I'm sorry for talking too much, but here,
No.
that a lot of there's a lot of parents who that are gun owners, who they take the tact, my kid will not see a gun until they're 14, 15, 16, and then maybe I'll take them to range, maybe I won't. But
Wow.
there's a lot of families like that don't bring their weapon. Like, my wife would prefer I don't bring my weapon around my kids, but my kids have shot, they have went out shooting in a safe
Yeah.
manner and stuff like that. So, kind of talk to me, what does that look like in age range and safety?
So I think I could suggest to you the age ranges that I feel my books would be appropriate for in like my family's lifestyle. I would probably put the ages a little younger than the person you're describing. So Freedom Baby ABC is just, there's one image and maybe one or two words on each page. It's colorful, it's bright, it's cheerful, it's not boring, it's not like too technical at all. And I envisioned it being for like ages 2 to 6, maybe, in a family that where dad maybe goes hunting, or he's a police officer, or he's cleaning his. I grew up, my dad would spread out a bath towel and clean his gun in front of the TV while I was sitting on the couch. Like, it was just a normal
Me too.
thing. So I would feel like that would be for a family with that kind of lifestyle. It could be for a pretty young child. The gun safety activity book is just for the kids that are getting sort of bored with Freedom Baby ABC, and it's far more in depth. I would put it for like 7 to even 12 or 13 years old. But if you have a child like the 14-year-old in your example, who, you know, he might know what a gun is, or he plays video games, but he isn't actually out there, Freedom Baby ABC would teach him like the very basic vocabulary, and he could thumb through it real quickly and maybe learn that really fast. But the gun safety activity book, where in a kid that grows up with, you know, guns getting cleaned on the living room floor while dad watches TV, that it would not be boring for a 14-year-old who was interested, because so it has some coloring pages. All the images from Freedom Baby ABC are in it, because it's a coloring and activity book. So you can color the basic images. There's also all sorts of activities like, you know, mazes and crosswords and cryptograms and things. But there's a decent amount, I would say maybe even 20%, of pretty technical anatomical diagrams of the different weapons. There's like an AR style gun that the news would call an assault rifle. And then below that, there's just like a wooden rifle, like you might associate with like old timey things or cowboys. And it tells you, yeah. Well, this one's not a musket, but it's just a normal 22 looking, you know, wood stock rifle. And it just has, you know, the numbers on it. It's saying like, this is a barrel, this is a barrel, this is a stock, this is a stock, this, you know.
Oh, you go through a nomenclature. You go through the nomenclature. Okay.
And telling you that this black weapon that looks like what the media might tell you is an assault weapon, and it's very scary and bad, and they should all be banned. It's really exactly the same as this wooden stock rifle, you know. And so it's trying to teach them. It has diagrams like, always know what's behind your target. And so there's, you know, a person and a target and a tree and a building, and the, you know, little explosion mark is going through each one. It talks about, you know, different positions for competitive shooting. It has a page for each of the branches of the military and different things. But it talks about what's inside of a bullet, you know, like the powder and the primer and all that. It teaches how a primer works, because even some people, they know how to safely handle a weapon, but they don't necessarily know, you know, what's going on in the primer or whatever. And so it's got some decently technical things for somebody who's interested. And then it's got the basics for people that are just getting started.
Wow. Wow. Now tell me, because that one you said is probably your popular bestseller. Have you gotten testimonials or things from parents talking about how this has helped them?
I've gotten some really exciting endorsements from people I've requested, and I'm always pleased to get reviews. I have been like, my soul is crushed by the lack of reviews. For as many sales as I've made, I absolutely love reviews, and I think they help shoppers, but I have not gotten the amount of reviews I feel like would be expected for the amount of sales. So I've been really disappointed about that. My little author ego is so fueled by going to the gun shows and seeing people love it in person. So I do get a lot of feedback in person, and I sometimes get a great review that's exciting, but I've been super, like, a little disappointed because people love it so much, but they're not taking that time to leave a comment in the Amazon reviews. I do have, I think, 3 1-star reviews from people who just don't like guns, who have not read it, and they have taken the time to leave some poor reviews. But
they are very eager,
Oh, they're so eager.
They're very eager. They to speak up and tell you how much what they think and feel.
Yes.
So there's another part to your many books, and that's the Jane's Journal. Now, I told you about how much I love this. And the reason why is because you cover you cover medical conditions, you cover behavioral, and you, these books are like laid out, so you're sitting there and you don't have much time. Let's say your kid's in the middle of procedures in the hospital or having these behavior things, and you're trying to get ahead of it, so you have these things completely laid out
Yes.
for the parents to write on there so that they could get a better understanding. So can you go through each journal and what they do?
Absolutely. I've always envisioned the Jane's journals being open on the kitchen counter and just notes being taken over the course of the day, just real quick here and there as the day unfolds, keeping track of it so that you don't have to try to recall what happened, last week. So the Jane's journals came together. It was a couple of things all sort of coalescing at the same time. My uh, my sister-in-law had a baby, and we weren't allowed to meet it because we didn't want to get the whooping cough vaccine. And so that was really stressful for me because I was so excited that he was here and that, I had a local nephew. And I needed somewhere to sort of focus my time and my attention, that I thought I should be like holding this cute baby and whatever. So I met this woman through homeschooling, and I noticed she had all these supplements on the counter. I was at her house, and I said, like, wow, you have so many supplements. How on earth do you keep track of them all? And she said, and I had said that we were homeschooling. So it was this very varied conversation where she talked about, she had just pulled her son out of school because they had like locked him in a closet. He had autism. He has autism. And they were not going to take it anymore. They pulled him out. They didn't know how on earth homeschooling was going to work or about his resources that he had gotten at the school, but they were like, it's not worth it anymore. And we were talking about the supplements, and we were talking about her son, and we were talking about homeschooling. And I asked her how she kept track of everything, because like, as I told you, like, none of my kids are neurodivergent, but there's 5 of us. And I know there's a lot of juggling for any mom. And so what she was describing, I was like, how do you keep track of it all? And she reached over, and there was this like loose pile of papers, and she had just jotted down little things that she thought was important. And then there was like an arrow going from someday she remembered it later or something. And it was just this loose pile of papers. Like if she dropped it, they'd all be like out of order and lost and ruined. And I was like so overwhelmed by how she was caring for him and trying to keep track of everything, that the idea for the behavioral journal came to my mind, because she was saying that she tracked the phases of the moon. Like she was tracking all sorts of things that I had never even considered that a mom might be interested in tracking. So I started working on the behavioral journal with her as my sort of consultant. But then I was hanging out with a mom that I know from my homeschool group that I know well. And I was telling her about the journal, and she was talking about she's a nurse by trade, but she's quit her job to care for her 2 daughters. And her daughter has all these medical issues. She was measuring the ounces of urine that her daughter would have. She was counting calories on a level I had never tried. She was taking her blood pressure and weighing her, all these appointments, and the doctors would give her these protocols for her daughter, and she was have to keep track. And they would go in and they'd say, okay, drop this part of the protocol and do this other thing. And I was like, you have so much to keep track of. Like, how on earth do you do it? And she said that she would just look in her phone. She would take a picture of her daughter at the hospital because she was beautiful. And then later they'd be like, when did you go to the hospital? And she would scroll through her gallery and be like, oh, here's the picture. Let me look at the properties. Oh, that was a month ago. And I was like, well, that's super inefficient. Like, I can't believe you have all this data in your mind of ounces and calories. Like, how do you do this? And I was just in awe of her as well. And so I was consulting with her, and I started making a medical daily journal. And so I was working on the behavioral journal, I was working on the medical journal, and they were sort of coming together. And then I realized a lot of people have no idea what's going on with their children. Like the one woman, she knew her son was autistic. My friend, she knew the name of her daughter's condition. But there are people that have this huge range of symptoms, but they don't know what it is. They don't have a diagnosis yet. They just know that life is chaos, and they've got to manage the environment,
Yes.
and they've got to keep track of the red 40 at the parties and just everything. And so I realized I should make sort of a journal that blends behavioral symptoms with medical symptoms. And I call it Investigating the Cause, because it's trying to find patterns. It's trying to see, what is happening with this child. So you can keep track of the symptoms for 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks. Each journal is about a month. The behavioral journal can last longer. But you can look back and you can be like, oh, here exactly is when we went to the doctor. Here is why we went to the doctor. This is what the doctor said. This is what we've been doing since then. This happened on a full moon, and it has a huge amount of data. And so the Investigating the Cause has both behavioral and medical symptoms. And then while I was working on everything, a lot of the moms were saying how they were trying to use, what is it called, where you disqualify things? And they were doing these detoxes where they were like, is it gluten? Is it
Oh, right. They were trying to figure out what allergies, what they were trying to rule out.
Elimination.
Yeah.
And so I made an accompanying sort of like detox journal, so you can track, are these symptoms from the food? Is it better when there isn't the food, or whatever it is? And so there's also a detox journal. But that's how they came together. It was sort of just meeting this woman and then talking to my friend and my nephew being born, just all at the same time. And that's the fruit of those different stressors and conversations I had.
Wow. It's just cool that you were able to see this need and fill it. I
Yeah.
mean, that's what us veterans, that's what we do. We do that in society. We see needs and we fill them. And that's that can-do attitude, and this is such a big thing, because like in personal life, when there was times when we needed that bad. And I mean, that is a fantastic idea, because yes, there were like stickies and notes and things everywhere, and then phone notes and text messages.
Absolutely.
Like it was there, anything you could do to try to keep track of all this stuff, and
and the screenshots of the products and everything.
Yes.
So on the point, there's a whole section for going to the provider, and it says like, did they suggest you buy something? Do you need to refill something? Has all these. I really try to be pretty comprehensive with it. So after the month of daily note taking, there's also an sort of an appendix at the back for when you go to provider visits, or the provider assigns a kind of protocol, or little graphs where you can chart weight or whatever. So I tried to be as comprehensive as I could be. And I also put my email in the front. So if a mom sees a need, like I can very quickly go in and edit my document and republish it. That would be better for more families.
Wow. So what's next for you? I mean, you got 14, 15 books you've been doing. You've done things to help humanity, which is really special. That's always a good thing. So and thank you for that, because not a lot of people get to say that.
That's an honor for you to say that to me.
So now what's next?
Well, right now it's more books. Today, actually, I had a new book come out. It's called Winston, the Cat with a Mech Suit. I'm really excited about it. It's my first book that has a plot. I've written these themed alphabet books, and I've written the activity books that children engage with. But this is my first book that has a story with it. So I'm really excited about that. It's based on our three-legged cat. In the book, he has 4 legs, but it's based on our cat. Do you have a pet cat?
No, I got a German Shepherd, and I had a pug.
Okay, so that's a little different. We were never a cat family, and then we got a cat, I think, for my daughter's birthday. And after about a year or two of having cats, we were like, how did we ever survive without cats? And we couldn't imagine a life without them. But in our family, it is absolutely 100% a legitimate excuse to get out of things if you have a cat sleeping on you. So if I'm laying on the couch and I'm supposed to go do the laundry, but I have a cat, like I get out of it. If I call my son to come do something, he's got a cat, like he just gets off the hook. And this was so funny to us because we had never had cats before, that we were, that's how I came up with the idea. So in the book, this cat is always sleeping right where somebody needs to do something, and the person is limited to not be able to do the thing, is the cat's in the way. But then the cat has this kind of robot suit, and he climbs in the robot suit, and then he does the thing that he blocked earlier. So
Oh,
he's sleeping on the bed, so she can't change her sheets or make her bed. And then later she gets to paint and have fun with her hobby. And the robot suit is back there, and the cat is using the little controllers to make the bed for her. And so I'm really
yeah.
excited about it. And the colors and the art is beautiful. It's wonderful. I'm starting my first chapter book this year. I'm writing a whole series about growing up in the 80s. And so that's really exciting.
Hey, I know about that.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
know about
I'm really excited about that one, because I've done all the books I've done so far, except for my self-publishing book. They've been, the books based on those initial alphabets that I wrote, in 2019. And then, being a homeschooler, and like you said about seeing a problem and just fixing it, I realized that I had learned quite a bit about self-publishing. And so I threw together a whole guide for self-publishing for homeschool families. And that was, it's a written book. It has chapters. It's got text. I guess it sort of has a plot as it walks you through the self-publishing process. But writing the book about growing up in the 80s, I'm really excited about, because it's creative and it's not instructional. It's just for me, it's reminiscing, but I'm trying to make it really accessible and fun for kids to enjoy, and by putting them in that time period. So I'm really excited about that.
Yeah, it was a really cool time. Had the greatest music ever, and it's just we did get blessed with that. But
Yeah.
I can speak to you forever about this, but unfortunately, I'm coming to an end here soon. How can my guests look you up? And I got the website scrolling,
Yeah.
but like if you want to get your books, is it on Amazon, or should they go to your site, and then is there a link or?
Yeah, if you go to my website, you can see everything I've published, and a lot of them you can peek inside and see if the content is right for you. My gun safety activity book and the Jane's journals, you can look inside and see examples of the pages to make better decisions. They all link over to Amazon. Everything's available on Amazon. And there's links for if somebody was getting started with homeschooling or wanted to self-publish. There's a calendar app on there. They can contact me. My email address, my socials, everything's all on the website. So
that is so awesome. Well, on my show, my guest always gets the last word. So I'm going to shut up and let you talk to my audience.
Oh, well, I feel like I've done most of the talking and got all those things that I wanted to say in.
Okay.
I don't know. If I could say anything, I would just tell people, because I really serve sort of niche markets, people that like are in the crunchy lifestyle, or people who have children with complex medical needs, or people who, are into gun safety. So these are like groups of the population that can be like standing alone in a lot of ways with each other, but not necessarily as a part of the huge American, media culture. And so I would just tell those people to find their community, and, don't just go to the range by yourself. Don't just go to the park with your kids if you start homeschooling, but like find people that agree with you and that can build you up and teach you, and you can, pour yourself and your skills into them, and build a local community of the people who live like you do.
Yes, it's always nice to have somebody along in that journey. When you're making your journey, it's always cool to have someone who's got your six or is there. We understand that concept.
Yeah.
It's been a fascinating conversation. I do appreciate you coming on our show. Can you stick around real quick?
For sure. Thank you for having me.